Hey, it's Bass here from Aussie RC Playground and welcome to my review of the FMS Futura V2. So to kick us off, we're going to start with the specs, and the specs are as follows. We have a wingspan of 1060mm, overall length of 1170mm, flying weight of 2500 grams or about 2.5 kilos. That's without battery, of course. Motor size is a 3280 2100 kV brushless in-runner. Our fan is of course an 80mm 12-bladed fan. ESC is 100 amps, battery is 4000 to 6000 milliamp 6S. Now that is by the book, but I will say that a 4000 might actually be too light for this plane, and I'll explain to you in a second why that is. Servos are 8 13-gram metal geared servos. Retracts are installed of course, and they are all metal, CNC metal landing gear. And you're going to need at least 6 channels to work this aeroplane. Alright, so now we move on to the all-important center of gravity, and the book calls for somewhere around about 100 to 105 millimeters from the leading edge of the wing. And that's pretty much how I've got mine set up. So I'll grab the plane here real quick. Better not grab it from inside the duct. And you'll see that I've actually got a couple of dots here marked on my wings to show that, you know, that's where my CG is. The reason why I have that is because I use a variety of different batteries with my aircraft, and I always like to mark out where the CG marks are going to be so that I know how to balance these aircraft. And I got a lot of them, so it's hard to remember where everything is. Now, the manual does say that you can use anything from a 4000 to a 6000 milliamp battery. I think a 4000 is going to be way too light. I think you need to start somewhere around about the 5000. And the reason why I say that, you'll see that I've actually got a 5200 milliamp Ovonic battery in here. So this is actually quite a decent sized battery, and it's heavy, it's got some weight. But yet I still have some additional nose weight right here in the front. So I got some lead weights in there to compensate, because even with this battery in here, I still felt that the plane was a little bit tail heavy. I would have had to move my CG back a little bit further in order to get the plane to balance out. Now, I'm not saying that you can't probably balance out the plane without having these weights. I'm sure there are people out there that have probably moved their CG back a little bit and they're fine. But going by the book, you do need to add some additional nose weight. At least it was the case with my aircraft. So that's kind of the only thing that I'm going to mention about the CG, is that I did need to add some extra nose weight. You can move the battery forward a little bit more, but there is a lip where the battery sits. There is a lip there, and if you move the battery forward, it's going to hit the top of the canopy or the underside of the canopy. You won't be able to close the hatch. So that's why I had to put the nose weight in there to keep the battery back from that raised lip. Now, batteries that I was using, as you saw, I've got a 5200 milliamp Ovonic in the plane at the moment, and I usually keep one in there when I'm doing stuff like this, just so that the plane doesn't tip up, because without the battery in there, the tail always sits down. So 5200 Ovonics, 50C, they actually work quite well. This is probably one of the better batteries I have, which is the 5000 milliamp HRB, and these are a 50C pack. Great batteries, they give the plane plenty of juice. And I also used the 5500 milliamp 45C Gens Ace. This is quite a wide battery. You can see the width there between the two, so I can't have this one standing up. I have to lay it down flat. Again, otherwise you won't be able to fit the canopy on. Now, there's probably another 24 different brands of batteries out there that anybody can use to go in here. You may be able to get something that's really flat, and you may not need to add any additional nose weight and be able to push the battery further forward. But for my scenario, for the batteries that I used, I did have to put some additional nose weight in there. So that's it for CG. Let's move on to assembly. Right, so assembly on a Futura V2 is actually real easy. There's no glue required, and it's just a series of screws, and you should be done in about half an hour to maybe 45 minutes to an hour, depending on how fast you are at putting these sorts of things together. So there were 3 screws for the horizontal stabilizer, one right at the back and one on either side. The vertical stabilizer has 3 as well, one on either side here and one right at the front. And then the main wings have 4 in total, so 2 on each wing, and that pretty much assembles the entire plane. The main connections for the main wings here just basically clip on. They have like a bullet style design, which works fantastic. It actually works really well. And then the horizontal and vertical stabilizers has your conventional sort of servo connections. You just got to tuck them away out of the way, so that you can keep the surfaces flat and flush to the fuselage. Up the front here we have our canopy, which has a spring-loaded design, and then you have all the room that you want for your battery and receivers and everything else like that in there. The receiver I'm using is an AR620 from Spectrum. It's an antennaless receiver. I've got no issues with these receivers whatsoever. I've got quite a number of them actually in a lot of my planes, and I've got no problems with that whatsoever. Heaps of room here for anything else that you might need, and of course there's more room up the front here. You can see I've got some Velcro here. This is where I had my GPS unit, so that I could see how fast this guy was, which we'll talk about in a little while. So heaps of room for everything that you need. Nice and simple design to put everything together. And in case you're wondering, all the ball links and everything, all the rod ends and all that have all got ball links, which is fantastic. Everything's already pre-installed. It's a really simple, really easy plane to put together and get out to the field and fly. CNC landing gear with suspension all the way around. So really, really good design landing gear as well for grass landings and takeoffs. As you can see, you've probably got a little bit of residue on there from the last outing, or the last few outings that I've had with this guy. An absolutely brilliant plane to put together. You should be able to pick this one up in the morning and be out flying in the afternoon or a couple hours later fairly quickly. I think you're going to spend more time setting up your radio than you are putting the plane together. Okay, so when you get the Futura V2, you're going to find this guy floating around in the box. At least mine wasn't installed in the plane. I recently got the Avanti, and the Avanti already had this installed in the plane, so maybe the new batch of Futuras will have them. But this is essentially a gyro. There's an instruction booklet in here as well, so you can kind of set all this up. I'm not a big fan of gyros, which is why I didn't install it on the plane. So all your servo leads from the plane plug into this, and then all of that plugs into your receiver. Now, my understanding is that when you do this, you're going to need more than a 6-channel receiver, because you need an additional channel to be able to kind of select your modes and all that sort of thing. And I didn't have that. Well, I didn't want that option anyway, so I didn't bother. And that's why I didn't install the gyro with this guy. Plus, the plane flies perfect without it. And I think personally, if you're at a level where you're going to be, looking at buying a sports jet like this, you're probably kind of phasing out the gyros in your life anyway. I think gyros belong, on trainer aircraft. That's great for beginners. But when you start to get good, you probably find that gyro kind of gets in the way more so than anything else. It does help, smooth out, like if there is something, like if you're flying in turbulent conditions, it does help smooth out the aircraft, the aircraft's performance in the air. But I don't know, I think if the aircraft's good enough, and if you pick your days when you're going to fly, you're not going to really need anything like that. So, flying the Futura V2, this thing is just amazing. It's phenomenal. It is a little bit intimidating because it looks fast just standing there. It's very aggressive styling. This is definitely an aggressive style type of EDF plane, but man, it's such a puppy dog in the sky. It flies so well, and it is just an amazing aircraft to take to the air. If you are after something that's fast, and speaking of fast, this thing, I clocked it at 181 kilometers an hour. This is definitely a plane worth getting into your hangar. I did try an 8S system in here very briefly, but I didn't really like it. It flew a bit heavy. I managed to get up to about 199 kilometers an hour, but everything was just hot. Every time I landed, well, every time I flew it twice, I think, 2 or 3 times. And every time I landed, it was just, everything was hot. My cables were hot, the batteries were scorching hot. You could actually feel the heat coming off the speed controller and the motor and all that sort of thing. It really wasn't something that I found was suitable for this type of aircraft. There may be different 8S systems out there that work great. I personally didn't like the one I installed in here. And it wasn't for me. So I switched everything back to 6S. I like it better like this. It's lighter and it works a lot better, and it gives me the speed that I need for this aircraft. And it sounds fantastic on 6S. I think it sounds great. Suspension, I know that there's been some chatter out there in Facebook groups regarding the suspension of this aircraft. I personally haven't had too many issues with it. There was one problem that I had with the front nose gear, and that was really because I took off from a spot where I shouldn't have taken off from. The plane copped a bit of a bump. It kind of jumped up a little bit and it landed a little bit hard on the nose. I kept going and eventually took off into the air. And it wasn't until I landed that I realized that the landing gear at the front was kind of like getting stuck, and sometimes it wouldn't go up and it wouldn't go up all the way or whatever, and it was just sort of kind of like jittering and it wasn't good. So I replaced the entire servo, like the whole landing gear thing here. I just kept the aluminium strut and put it onto the new one, and that's been fine ever since. Of course, I don't fly that field at the field where that happened anymore, so hopefully I won't have that issue in the future. But that's really the only way that I can see that you'll damage the landing gear on this plane is, if you have a bit of a hard landing or something like that. That's when that sort of thing might happen. Aside from that, I've had maybe 2 or 3 dozen flights with this aircraft now, quite a number of flights, and I've got nothing to complain about with the Futura V2 as far as the landing gear goes. Suspension is absolutely fantastic. It comes into land beautifully, so even if you have a little bit of a bumpy ride on your runway, this thing will soak it up no problem at all. I know that there's been some chatter also on Facebook in regards to which one's better, the Avanti S from Freewing or this. Some people seem to think that both is a good option because they are equally very, very good. I don't have the Avanti S from Freewing, so I can't really comment on it, but I can tell you that this is an absolutely brilliant aircraft, and if you're after a sports jet in an 80mm size EDF, this is definitely one to consider. So that pretty much wraps up my review of the Futura V2, and if you can't already tell, I absolutely love this aircraft. I think FMS did a fantastic job with this new one. I've never really owned the previous model before, so I can't give you any comparisons to that one and what's changed and what's not, but I can tell you that the current version that I have here is absolutely fantastic. Plenty of speed, plenty of power, lots of cool features, plenty of room in there for batteries and electrics and so forth. They even give you the option to install a gyro if you really want to use it, although like I said, I don't really see the need for it. And yeah, good landing gear, great flight performance. What more could you want from a sports jet? Now I'm going to leave you with a flight demo. This is going to be a full flight demo for the half a dozen of you who are still watching at the end of this video. I thank you all, and I hope to see your comments in the comment section down below. Don't forget to hit that like button before you go, and subscribe to the channel if you're new. And that is it from me. Thank you again, and I'll speak to you all next time.